29-year-old Helen Hayton looks the picture of health. But in 1999, she needed a kidney transplant and got the organ from her twin brother. 3 years later, she won 6 medals at the Transplant Games. She says the operation changed her life. For many people with kidney failure and waiting for a donor, the only option is dialysis. This can take many hours, but gives patients the opportunity to at least have some normality in their lives. There is still a shortage of donors. New ways for donors to register includes an online service. And doctors feel the pioneering work 50 years ago has given patients a real chance of a long life. Dr. Chris Rudge said there had been nobody who had survived for any significant period of time after a kidney transplant. Nowadays, the vast majority of patients are going to live for many years with a functioning transplant. 10 or 15 to 20 years is not out of the question. 50 years after the success of kidney transplants, it's hoped more donors will give others like Helen Hayton an opportunity to have the operation and live a normal life for many years. Former US President Bill Clinton is one of an estimated 14 million Americans who have an often undiagnosed medical condition that is nothing to chuckle about. It's called rosacea, a prevalent skin condition that begins as facial redness and resembles a sun or wind burn. The redness and irritation is caused by inflamed blood vessels at the skin's surface. Over time, it can develop a swollen, dilated nose with enlarged blood vessels. The bad news is that almost anything can trigger it. Wine, caffeine, chocolate, spicy foods, hot weather, exercise, excitement, in other words, anything fun. The good news is that it can be treated through oral and topical antibiotics. The skin condition is much more common in fair-skinned people and becomes more prevalent after the age of 30. Patients are now using a topical antibacterial cream to minimize facial redness. The condition is not curable, but sufferers must continue to take the daily medication and watch for triggers that exacerbate their condition. At the National Institute for Medical Research near London, researchers are studying the genes that protect against infection with retroviruses, the type of viruses that cause AIDS. They have now found that we humans, unlike our nearest genetic relatives, do not have a particular gene that protects against the HIV virus which causes AIDS. Scientists have found that the monkey gene is capable of preventing HIV growth, whereas the human gene is not. The human gene is fully active against other retroviruses, but does not affect HIV. The bad news is that evolution has denied humans this protective gene against the HIV virus. The flip side of the discovery is the possibility it opens up of treating people whose cells are already infected with HIV by introducing the protective gene into their bodies in a similar way to gene therapy being tried in a number of other gene-linked conditions. An alternative approach would be to try to develop drugs that would switch on the human gene to protect against HIV. But there is certainly much more research work to be done. Schoolteacher Yana Dimitrov needs a lot of energy to deal with a classroom full of students, but chronic fatigue made her task unworkable. Yana has been undergoing a treatment that has its origins in the 1950s. In order to treat chronic fatigue, her doctor administers high-dose shots of vitamin B12. She gets 2 of the shots twice a month and has been undergoing the treatment for nearly 8 months. Yana says it has transformed her life. Dr. Hurt says the treatments are effective for all patients suffering from fatigue. B12 is relatively inexpensive and won't, conversely, interact with other medications. Yana is receiving a dosage 24 times the amount given 50 years ago. Some medical experts have criticised the high-dose shots, arguing that excessive B12 is simply excreted in urine. But for now, the treatment has a growing number of dedicated supporters. It looks like Dawson's Creek, a highly popular American teen TV program. He looks at her, she looks at him and smiles. He moves in, but she pulls out the cigarettes, and he's horrified.
Think smoking makes you look cool?
To an adult, that looks like a clever anti-smoking commercial.
No way.
Cheryl Heaton of the American Legacy Foundation says that kind of don't message doesn't motivate kids.
No one can have my style.
But not so savvy that, in the long tradition of no such thing as bad publicity, research just published in the New England Journal of Medicine shows the ads actually increase smoking among teenagers who see them. Philip Morris's Howard Willard says that's not what their research says. We are confident, he explains, that our youth smoking prevention advertising clearly conveys that not smoking is the right decision for kids to make. How many people tobacco kills every day? Yells an anti-tobacco protester through a bullhorn. American Legacy's anti-smoking ads are far more edgy, like these teens dumping body bags around the office of a major tobacco company. The focus is on health dangers and alleged marketing manipulation by big tobacco companies. Philip Morris says it shares the Anti-Smoking Foundation's goal to cut the number of teens who smoke to 16% by 2010. Experts wonder why that those who for years so brilliantly sold cigarettes to teens are now so inept at warning them away now. According to Cancer Research UK, over 150,000 people a year die from cancer in this country. While much can be done to reduce this, a new survey of 4,000 people found that despite people knowing the dangers of smoking, they were less aware of other risk areas. There's also a lack of awareness about the danger posed by excessive alcohol use. To counter this, the Reduce the Risk campaign has been launched. This measures the positive side of a healthy diet, exercise, and keeping out of the sun. These will be backed up by posters and leaflets telling people of the importance of change. A big issue is the need for people over the age of 50 to be regularly screened for cancer. For those who have suffered or known family with cancer, screening is crucial. Cancer Research UK believe if people take the advice of the Reduce the Risk campaign, the numbers of people diagnosed with cancer can be cut by 50%. Barbara Gibbs, a former breast cancer sufferer, says don't be frightened. It's only a little painful having a mammogram, but it saved my life and it could well save yours. Epileptic seizures used to rule the lives of Jamison and her parents, Anita and Curtis. They held round-the-clock vigils over their daughter to make sure the disorder did not get out of control. At one point, she was having about 200 a month, and one or more of the parents had to be with her every hour of the day. Yasmin had no response to several medications and only a partial response to a special diet. Since doctors couldn't locate a focal point for the seizures in her brain, Jasmine wasn't a candidate for surgery. The next most reasonable option, according to her doctors, was a device called the vagus nerve stimulator, even though, like other common treatments for epilepsy, it wasn't approved for use in children. It is implanted into the chest and two nodes attached to the vagal nerve in the neck. The vagal nerve sends signals to the brain, and the stimulator uses that connection to send its own currents that, in theory, keep seizures from happening. But another cycle can be activated by a magnet if the regular current doesn't work. But the device isn't perfect, so Anita and Curtis are training their dog Dakota as a seizure dog, and so far the pooch is 70% accurate in predicting Jamison's seizures. Emerging technology might help Jamison one day. Until then, the magnet is never far away. It has transformed how we communicate. You can be in touch with friends and colleagues almost anywhere in the world. But fast though technology develops, there has been growing concern that radiation from mobile phones may be harmful, especially to children. Concern has been expressed over the positioning of phone masts near schools. But a report released by the National Radiological Protection Board does not see this as a clear risk. They emphasise the need for coordinating testing procedure. There is evidence that hands-free kits do reduce exposure, maybe by 50%. But the problem is that there is no standard testing procedure. The need for greater clarity from phone companies and regulatory bodies was also highlighted. They point to the danger that technology can often move faster than research. The World Health Organization is being urged to coordinate the different types of research that are going on around mobile phones. Mobile phones are here to stay, and this report does not portray them as an outright health risk. But caution, in particular for children, is the watchword. Touch is not only critical for emotional development in infants, it helps form lifelong bonds between parent and child. That's why Domingo Sanabria and a growing number of other new dads are taking part in infant massage classes. And already Sanabria is seeing positive results. Dr. Tiffany Field says that early contact between father and newborn is critical. Infant massage is a special way for new fathers to bond with their babies. Experts say infant massage is easy to learn, and dads should take cues from their newborns on the timing and the duration of massage using firm but gentle pressure. Once learned, experts say infant massage can be more effective in soothing a cranky baby than rocking or walking. And it offers long-term payoffs by helping dads form lifelong bonds. Blood donation centers across America could lose as many as 300,000 donations as new stricter donor screening guidelines take effect. The restrictions are the second of three mandated by the US Food and Drug Administration in the wake of mad cow disease. Government health officials fear that the brain-wasting disease, which in humans is called U-variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, could theoretically be carried in the blood supply. The restrictions focus on those who have travelled or lived in Europe. These restrictions could mean a shortfall of more than 1 million donations. It will hit the US military the hardest because it will eliminate 25% of donors. Every day, more than 40,000 units of blood are needed to serve about 4 million people in America. The need is critical, and it's the blood on the shelves that save lives. There are those who say this is an extreme restriction. They've been researching this for a long time, and even in the UK, where most of the mad cow disease cases occurred, there's been no link between transfusions and people with the disease. These restrictions will be particularly hard on places like New York, which import much of its blood supply. People with severe physical disabilities in Spain may be able to attain a greater degree of independence thanks to technology devised by three brothers in Barcelona. Joaquin Romero and his brothers were inspired to create this system, which automated some of the basic devices in a home when Joaquin was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He lives in the Spanish capital, Barcelona. Multiple sclerosis is a degenerative disease of the central nervous system. Joaquin needs a wheelchair to get around the city. He lives alone, and operating simple household devices has become difficult for him. If his condition continues to deteriorate, this degenerative disease may one day confine him to bed. Joaquin has a good degree of independence despite his illness. His apartment is installed with a new system which allows him to control many of the features of his home through automation. A remote control chairlift means that Yaquan is not dependent on another person to get him into his wheelchair. The lights, windows and doors can all be operated at the flick of a switch. With the press of a button, he can activate an alarm that will warn a neighbour if there's a problem. Yaquan's wheelchair allows him to work from home. He runs a company with his brothers, which is the only business in Spain developing this kind of technology. The family don't expect to make a lot of profit, but they feel that with this system, they provide an important service. Over 200 exhibitors were at the Mobility Roadshow, offering an array of products aimed at making it easier for those with disabilities to get around and live as active a life as possible. This annual exhibition offers some innovative technological solutions to the problem of getting from wheelchairs to cars or other means of transport. It's called adaptive technology. Wall-mounted cupboards can be a nightmare for those in a wheelchair, but these lower-level revolving shelves show that a little ingenuity can solve many of the everyday problems faced by disabled people in an able-bodied world. Many of the gadgets on show, like this quickly disassembled wheelchair, are designed to give people maximum independence to live their lives. Disabled people are playing an increasingly full role in working and sporting life in Britain. And what about recreation? Here's a three-wheeled motorbike for the disabled. It's all thanks to this kind of advanced technology and a greater awareness of the need for all citizens, disabled or not, to live their lives to the full. Until now, parents have had to wait as long as 5 months for an ultrasound to find out if they are having a boy or a girl. The Hunters of Middletown, Wisconsin have 3 active little boys. Now Tonya Hunter is 16 weeks pregnant with her 4th child. Another boy? Or is it a girl? They can't wait to find out. And this is the new baby gender test kit. A simple prick of the finger and a drop of blood is all it takes. The sample is then shipped to a laboratory in Massachusetts, where a computer will analyze the mother's blood for traces of DNA from the fetus that indicates its gender. There are concerns parents may use this test to do more than learn whether to paint the nursery blue or pink. An online maternity store says it's sold more than 1,000 kits in 3 weeks. The test is accurate, simple to use, and can be done very early in pregnancy. Dr. Jane Burridge is an expert on muscle movement. Here she is testing the arm muscles of a healthy volunteer. It's the first stage in a project she hopes will produce the first practical way to help people who have suffered strokes to regain movement in their arms. After a stroke, muscles have to relearn to move again. This robot, which can learn to move better as it carries out a task, will form the basis of an intelligent electrical simulator to help patients relearn specific movements. The researchers have already drawn up designs for a prototype, and if this project proves successful, it will provide the practical way to help people of all ages, from young sports people to the elderly, to relearn movement after strokes. The next part of the process of rehabilitation then will be to make sure patients are not dependent on the controller. He is among the teeniest of patients. Not much more than a foot long, Angel Castaneda was delivered a month and a half prematurely because doctors discovered he was having heart failure. A healthy newborn has a heart rate of about 120 beats a minute. Angel's heart rate, just 40. A miniature patient requires a miniature pacemaker, and this is the model they implanted. Not much bigger than a quarter, it generates electrical impulses that continually stimulate the heart to beat normally. Pacemakers are usually implanted just above the stomach, but Angel was so small, doctors had to put it on his diaphragm, his only muscle large enough and strong enough to hold it. And there it is, implanted just hours after he was born. Doctors say Angel will need a pacemaker for the rest of his life. He'll get a larger one in a few years, and then replacements every 5 to 10 years. A month after the operation, he remains in intensive care, but is putting on weight. Doctors say if he continues growing, he will leave the hospital soon. Nancy Buey had a series of strokes, and doctors discovered that she, like millions of others, had a hole or tunnel between the right and left side of her heart. This allows tiny clots to pass out of the heart through the body and up to the brain where they can cause a stroke. And some doctors think now these same clots from the heart may also trigger migraines. They say the migraine sufferer is hyperexcitable, and if that material goes to the brain, it can trigger a cascade of events in the brain that can lead to a migraine. Doctors use this collapsible mesh plug to seal the heart. They thread the plug through a vein in the leg and up the heart where it expands into place. The whole procedure takes just 45 minutes under a local anesthetic. Complications from this procedure are rare. The most common, though, is an irregular heartbeat, which can easily be corrected. Researchers say the procedure must now be tested on many more migraine patients before it can be approved as a possible cure. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive, degenerative and irreversible brain disorder. It causes intellectual impairment, disorientation and eventually death. At the moment there is no cure and doctors can only treat the symptoms. Norman Bissett suffers from Alzheimer's, but he has experienced a remarkable recovery. He's taking part in a new treatment program. It's not clear if he is taking the new drug or a placebo, but if his recovery is due to the new drug, then it may become possible to stop this disease in its tracks. Flurazan shows promise at preventing a buildup called amyloid plaque from clogging the brain of Alzheimer patients. And this is the newest focus in the fight against the disease. Scientists believe if they can interrupt that accumulation of amyloid, they will in fact change the course of Alzheimer's disease, and that is ultimately what they're testing here. Flurazan is just one experimental therapy trying to halt the effects of Alzheimer's disease.